Alright, today we're going to be going over how to clean your vault. As you can see, my vault is pretty hectic and it is very full. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to write some rules. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to protect our power level by typing in a command called not max power. So you can either type in not :max power. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the next very important one, which is not tagged. That's going to give me a list of items that I have not filtered yet. Now, we could stop here, but there's some other things I want to do, so I could say not exotic, because I know all the exotics that I have right now I don't really want to filter right now. And then we could either say not armor, or we could say is weapon. And that just restricts our search limit down, so we don't have to worry about the rest. So we can save that, and that just makes it so that we have a list of things that we need to filter. So then the next thing we would do with the search function would be, notice I have a lot of these hand cannons, so I can go ahead and click on this, I hit compare, and now it has all of my roles that I have in here. So now there's some other things you can do here. This will just go ahead and add in all of your hand cannons, all kinetic weapons that are hand cannons, any precision hand cannons, just comparing those different types. So now I'd go through here and I would just simply tag all of these. For example, let's find one that I have fewer of so that it can take less time. Okay, here we go. So I already know that I want to keep these, and this is a repeat role of this one. I don't really like Alloy Magazine, so I'm going to hit infuse on this one because it is my max power. That's a free upgrade to the ones that I do want to keep, and this is a really good roll. So now you'll notice once I go ahead and click away from this, my grid skipper that I clicked on is now no longer inside of our search function, so it grays out, and now I can go through the rest. So that's pretty much how you do weapons. Just filter all of your pieces of gear, and then once you have tagged a lot of your items as junk, your next most important search function would be tag junk. And then that's going to automatically filter all of the items that you've marked as junk, and then you can click on these three dots here, transfer search, tag junk, and that will move all of your pieces of gear over. For armor pieces, this is going to be a bit more involved than weapons. Let's just take any piece for example. This fire helmet, tier 62 total, it's got a decent resilience roll, and these recovery and intellect rolls will proc up to +1 once masterworked. But if we compare it to all other fire helms, we can see, okay, is it the best overall? Maybe not. I don't know. Like this it says 63, so you might think, oh, well, this is just automatically better. That's not always the case. So there's a few different things that we can do for armor. I started by saying total, base stat total, and then less than or equal to. Now this number is going to vary based on your vault and how long you've been playing. For me right now, I've decided that 55, anything less than 55, I'm okay with getting rid of without even looking at it. Sometimes there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, if it's less than 55, I'm okay with that. If you're a newer player, this number may be too high for you to start making viable builds, but for me, it's totally fine. Now, I'm also going to do is armor, because sometimes weapons do end up having base stats on them. I know it's weird. I'm also going to say not class item, because all class items will end up showing up in this search function, because all class items show up with a base stat roll of 0. So I'm going to put that in there also. I'm also going to put in not exotic, because I don't want to compare my exotics right now. I compare my exotics to themselves because they are intrinsically unique to themselves. For the most part, I would be okay with deleting all of these items. I may click on them just to see, like right now, I wouldn't get rid of these stasis items. So I might say, just because they're so new, I might say not stasis. And so it would save those pieces. And then I've forgotten one very important piece here. I'm going to add in not max power because we don't want to get rid of our most powerful pieces of gear, right? You would save this, and anytime you search it, you can, for the most part, be pretty okay with junk and all this stuff. I'm going to mark this as not junk, actually, because I want to keep this Pathfinder helm because I want for the seasonal achievements. But that's one way. Now, a better way in my opinion. This is to kind of get rid of your trash piece. But now we want to highlight our good pieces. And our good pieces to highlight is going to take a bit more thought. So here in the optimizer tool, you kind of get to choose what kind of build you want to have. So there's a lot of numbers on this screen. There's a lot to digest. The first thing I want to point your attention to is the total tier number up here. So this number is going to be the total allocation of all of your full points. Stats in Destiny, they only work if you hit the next row of 10. So right now this 3.5 is only giving me the value of a 3. If I added a half strength mod to it, it would become a 4, and it would tick this up to a 32 tier. I like to reorder these in my order of preference. Right now, my Titan is my main. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what these numbers mean. The left column shows your minimum acceptable value for that stat. What does that mean? So let's say I want to have, at a minimum, only show me builds that, based on the parameters I have chosen, will give me 7 recovery at the get-go. Okay? So automatically, all of these builds can do that. They're already going well above that with 8. So that means we can probably push it. So let's push it up to 8. We can see that that's true. What happens if we push it to 10? Give it a second to think. Now, what I believe is going to happen, yep, exactly what I thought. Once we pushed our recovery to 10, notice our total tier has dropped. So because we put so many points into one stat, we've lost 1 total point across the board somewhere. Okay? So, it doesn't always behoove you to just max a stat out. You want to kind of fill in those gaps with mods and just get to your highest tier possible based on your base gear score. So we don't necessarily want to go tier 10 on our base gear score. So I'm going to drop this back down to 0 because that's still going to allow for my best builds to come in. Now on the right, you don't ever really use the right one. This is when you're getting really niche and say, I do not want to have any higher than 2 mobility on this build at all. Right? So that's going to really restrict you down. But it does have its place sometimes, specifically on certain Warlock builds where you're trying to have a very low base mobility. This could be really helpful. And it will also help you highlight some pieces of gear that will push your other stats into higher areas, or to force your low stat that you would get from having a high stat somewhere else to be the stat that you want it to be. So that can be really helpful in that instance. Now, what are these buttons on this side? So right now, I have it set to Enhancement Prism. That just means that it's going to assume stats based on gear that is +9, not Masterworked. So if I want to tell the game to, regardless of what it is, I want to pretend that the gear is Masterworked to get these stats, it will now show me gear that I have not Masterworked yet, but will give me the best stats if I do that. So just give it a second to think. It couldn't figure out how to give me 1 mobility, so we have to fix that. Okay, so in theory, these builds right here are going to be my quote-unquote best in slot pieces, because without putting anything in, they're already giving me tier 32 stats. So I would look at all of these tier 32 sets, and I'm going to scroll down until I hit tier 31. So that means that every single piece of gear in my tier 32 sets are going to be my best in slot for these stat distributions. Now, notice, these stat distributions are based on my parameters over here. Let's see what happens when I put recovery to the top, or discipline to the top. Okay, so some items may have shifted, but for the most part, it's still the same. Like this tier 32 would have still been in that list. But anyway, I would look at all of these pieces of gear. All of these pieces of gear in my tier 32s, and I would save them. Like, look at this. Non-masterworked new helmet. I'm going to keep this. Okay? I don't even know why. I just know it's in my best slots. Same thing here. I'm going to keep it. Now, sometimes you'll get a piece of gear that is not that great, but it fits into the puzzle piece of all of your other best in slot pieces so perfectly to give you that zero, like that even stat distribution, that sometimes you want to keep them. So I always refresh and look at these all the time just to see, okay, am I missing a +5 somewhere? Can I get that in a piece of gear, or do I need to use a half mod? Do I need to use a stat mod somewhere? So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my, I'm going to, notice these are all best in slot pieces, right? But they're forcing me to use certain exotics. So this might be my best in slot for these stats on, the Hallowfire Heart, but maybe I don't want a Hallowfire Heart. So I'm going to pick an exotic. Let's say I want to make a build for the Curse of the Falling Star. Right? Now, what's most important on the Curse of the Falling Star? Getting our melee back so that we can get our super, and our super back so that we can get our super. So I'm going to want a high strength, high intellect build. So I'm going to put these up here just so I can see them better. And you'll notice I always want to have high recovery. That's just, the game is just better when you do that. So I'm already liking these builds. I'm already liking these. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go down. I know that if I pick... Go down here. You can also just search them. I know if I pick Radiant Light, I know that I'm going to get a +20 to strength. Right? So now notice, it didn't necessarily keep my build the same. It gave me my best overall stat distribution. You would have thought, oh, well, that other tier had tier 6 strength already, so add 2 onto it, I'll have 8. Well, that build still exists, obviously. If I go here and I tell it to give me +8 strength, it's probably going to go ahead and bring me that build back, right? Something in that ballpark, right? Still 9 recovery, 9 strength, something like that. But when I put this back to the minimum, it's going to give me my total best slot. See? Tier 23. So you have to choose. Do you want to have total base stats higher, or do you want to have your specific builds? Now remember, we still have 5 mods we can add to our base stats. So we can add a +5 to make this a tier 38. I have a tier 40 somewhere. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I go ahead and go into here, I can also add another 20 to my mobility to give me another +2 by picking Powerful Friends. This isn't always your best option, but you can do this. And then I'm going to look at these builds here and see what I need. So I need 3 recovery and 2 strength, so let's go ahead and do that. So recovery mods, 1, 2, 3. Strength mod, 1, 2. Select those. And now it's going to give me these builds. I have a tier 40 build. Right? Now, is it 3 triple hundreds, quad hundreds? No, it's not. But this is how you get there, right? So this is how you highlight new pieces of gear. Like I didn't even see this piece. This is a brand new piece. I was probably gonna junk it, but now I'm gonna keep it because it's showing up in all of these different tier 40 builds, right? These boots, keeping them. Probably wouldn't have even looked at them because they're from last season, right? So that's how you can highlight your good pieces of gear. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. There are some other nuggets you can always do is sunset. That'll give you your sunset pieces of gear. You can also do be careful with this one. Don't just do is blue and then junk it, because sometimes you'll get some inventory pieces. So always do is blue, is weapon, and then you have to put an or here, because a piece of item gear can't be a weapon and a piece of armor. So that will highlight your blues. You can just save that. And then yeah, you just type in tag junk. And transfer search tag junk, and you can delete it all as it comes into your inventory. Another note, farming mode makes space. It is good. However, if you get to the point where you are at max inventory space across the board, you're still going to end up deleting pieces of gear, so just be mindful. I tend to clean my vault out every couple days, and I still end up at 500 because I hate myself. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or would like some more intricate search ideas, there are a lot of ways to use this search tool to really pinpoint down um, very specific builds or very specific pieces of gear. This is just meant to be an inventory and vault space saving guide. Um, so if you have any other questions, go ahead and leave them down below. I'll be planning on trying to make some more dim guides in the future. So, yep. Thanks, everybody.